He was a child prodigy who terrified a nation, a Harvard graduate who lived without electricity, a man who mailed death and called it freedom. This is the story of Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and the brother who turned him in. Montana, 1971. A young man with a genius IQ walks into the wilderness. He builds a cabin. No power, no running water, no neighbors for miles. He is alone, and he is planning something. Ted Kaczynski was not born a monster. He was born in Chicago, 1942. A sickly child, but a brilliant one. By 5th grade, his IQ was tested at 167. By 16, he was at Harvard, one of the youngest students in history. Professors called him a mathematical genius. They said he would change the world. But something happened at Harvard, something dark. Between 1959 and 1962, Ted participated in a psychological experiment. It was led by Dr. Henry Murray. Murray had worked for the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the Central Intelligence Agency. The experiment was brutal. Young men were brought into a room, strapped to chairs, electrodes attached to their heads. Then they were subjected to hours of intense psychological abuse, insults, humiliation, personal attacks about their deepest insecurities. Ted was stripped down, emotionally and mentally. He was made to feel worthless, and then he was told to write everything down, to relive it again and again. The experiment was called the interrogation. Ted never spoke about it, but something inside him broke. After Harvard, he went to the University of Michigan. He earned his PhD in mathematics. He became a professor at Berkeley, but he hated it. He hated the system. He hated technology. He hated what the world was becoming, so he walked away. In 1971, he built his cabin, and for the next 7 years, he lived in silence, reading, writing, planning. Then, in 1978, he mailed his first bomb. It was sent to Northwestern University. A security guard opened the package. It exploded. He survived, but barely. The police were baffled. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no motive. They called the bomber the campus bomber. Then, more bombs. An airline executive, a computer store owner, a university professor, and then a man in Sacramento, Hugh Scruton. He owned a computer rental shop. On a December morning in 1985, he walked into his parking lot. He saw a wooden box. He picked it up. He had no idea what was inside. He did not live to tell anyone. Hugh Scruton was 43 years old. He had a wife. He had children. He had a dream. And his dream ended in a parking lot because a genius decided he was a threat to humanity. The FBI was desperate. The bombs kept coming. And the bomber was still out there. For 17 years, from 1978 to 1995, the Unabomber terrorized America. He sent 16 bombs. He killed 3 people. He injured 23 others. His targets were always the same: airline executives, computer scientists, marketing professionals. He hated technology. He hated progress. He hated everything modern. He believed the Industrial Revolution was a disaster. He believed humanity was destroying itself, and he believed it was his job to stop it. The FBI had a task force. It was called the Unabomber Task Force. Over 100 agents, more than any other investigation in history. They chased dead ends. They interviewed thousands. They spent millions, but they could not find him. He was too careful, too smart, too paranoid. He never made a mistake, until he wrote a letter. In 1995, Ted sent a letter to the New York Times. He offered a deal. If the newspapers published his manifesto, he would stop bombing. The manifesto was 35,000 words long. It was called Industrial Society and Its Future. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it was Ted's undoing. The FBI was divided. Should they publish it? Could they risk giving a terrorist a platform? But then, someone at the Department of Justice made a decision. Publish it. Maybe someone would recognize the writing. Maybe someone would turn him in. And that decision changed everything. In a small town in upstate New York, a woman sat in her kitchen. She was reading the newspaper. The manifesto was there. She read it carefully. Then her heart stopped. She knew those words, those ideas, that voice. It sounded exactly like her son who had disappeared into the Montana wilderness, her son who had written similar letters to her son, Ted. Her name was Wanda Kaczynski, and she loved her son more than anything. Wanda was terrified. She could not believe her son could do such things. She called her other son, David. David Kaczynski was a kind man, a gentle soul. He loved his brother, but he read the manifesto, and he felt it, in his gut. He knew his brother was the bomber. He stared at the newspaper for hours. His hands were shaking. He could not eat. He could not sleep. He was being torn apart. His heart and his conscience were at war. David did not want to believe it. He called his mother. They talked for hours. They cried together. They prayed together. But deep down, David knew the truth. The writing was unmistakable. The ideas were exactly what Ted had been saying for years. He was the one. And David had a choice to make. For 2 months, David wrestled with his decision. If he said nothing, people would die. More innocent people. More families destroyed. But if he spoke, he would betray his own brother. The brother he grew up with. The brother he looked up to. The brother who had always been different. David hired a private investigator. He collected evidence. He documented everything. And then he made the call. He called the FBI. It was a cold morning in February 1996. Terry Turchi was the lead agent. He took the call, and he could barely believe what he was hearing. A brother offering to turn in his own blood. Turchi asked David for proof. David sent letters his brother had written. He sent descriptions of the cabin. He sent everything. The agents compared the writing. It was a match. They were certain. They had him. On April 3rd, 1996, the FBI moved in. They surrounded the cabin, the tiny shack in the woods. Smoke was rising from the chimney. He was inside. The agents approached slowly. They did not know what they would find. They did not know if he would fight. They did not know if he had more bombs. But they knocked, and they arrested him, without a single shot fired. The arrest was quiet, but the trial was a media circus. Ted Kaczynski was driven to Sacramento. He stood in court. His hair was wild. His beard was long. He looked like a wild man, but his eyes were clear, and they were filled with rage. He did not believe he had done anything wrong. He believed he was a hero. He believed he was saving humanity. He believed he would be a martyr. His lawyers wanted to argue that he was insane. They wanted to say he was a victim of his own mind. Ted refused. He did not want that defense. He did not want to be seen as crazy. He wanted to be seen as a revolutionary. He wanted the world to listen to his ideas. He fired his lawyers. He tried to represent himself. He fought every step, but the evidence was overwhelming. In 1998, Ted Kaczynski pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 8 life sentences, without the possibility of parole. He was taken to a supermax prison. Florence, Colorado, the most secure prison in America. He spends 23 hours a day in a cell. He has no human contact. He is alone, just like he wanted, but not the way he imagined. David Kaczynski, the brother who turned him in, never forgave himself. He struggled with depression. He struggled with guilt. He struggled with the weight of what he had done. He saved lives. He ended a terror campaign, but he lost his brother. And that loss never went away. Wanda Kaczynski, the mother, lived the rest of her life in pain. She visited Ted in prison. She wrote letters. She tried to love him, even when she could not understand him. She died in 1996, a broken mother, a mother who loved 2 sons and lost both of them, one to the world, one to his mind. The Unabomber's story is not just about bombs. It is about isolation. It is about genius turning into obsession. It is about a system that failed a brilliant man. It is about a brother who made the hardest choice. It is about a nation that refused to give in to fear. Ted Kaczynski is still alive. He is 84 years old. He sits in a concrete cell. He writes letters. He still believes he was right. He still believes technology will destroy us all. But he is powerless now. He is forgotten. He is a ghost in a cage. But the victims, they are not forgotten. Hugh Scruton, Thomas Mosser, Gilbert Murray, they had families, they had dreams, they had futures that were stolen. A man with a genius IQ decided they were enemies of humanity, and he murdered them, not with a gun, not with a knife, with a package wrapped in brown paper, a package that looked harmless, a package that killed. So we remember the fear, we remember the 17 years of uncertainty, we remember the mail that could kill, we remember the brother who made the choice, we remember the mother who wept, we remember the agents who never gave up, and we remember the victims who never got to tell their stories. This is the story of Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber, a story of genius, a story of madness, a story of family, a story of betrayal, a story of justice, and a story of a brother's love. Love that hurt, love that sacrificed, love that saved. In the end, David did not just stop a killer, he stopped a war, a one-man war against the world, and he did it because he could not stand by and watch, because he had a conscience, because he was human, because he was the hero the world never saw. The Unabomber is gone, but the lesson remains. Watch the signs, listen to the whispers, love your family, but love the truth more. Because sometimes the hardest thing you will ever do is the right thing, and sometimes saving the world means losing everything.